Donald Trump's Attorney General Pam Bondi appears to be both pissed and scared. In many ways, Donald Trump kind of outed her in a way that I think she's livid about because she doesn't have absolute immunity the way the Supreme Court on many issues gave Donald Trump absolute immunity. And I think Pam Bondi is keenly aware that her aiding and abetting a lot of Donald Trump's unlawful behavior makes her someone that people could be raising questions about in the future about executing unlawful orders potentially. So when Donald Trump posted on social media a few weeks back at this point, Pam, I need you to go after my political opponents. I need you to go after New York Attorney General Letitia James and James Comey and Senator Schiff and others. She was livid, and the most recent reporting, though, was that Donald Trump did not mean to post that publicly. And in many ways, that makes it worse for Attorney General Pam Bondi because there are serious questions about how are they communicating with each other? Where are these communications? And from the Wall Street Journal report, by the way, a Rupert Murdoch property, Donald Trump was trying to communicate with Pam Bondi via direct message on Truth Social, on Trump's private social media company, Trump's private account on a private company that's now traded on the stock exchanges, that Donald Trump makes money, that Trump has a contract with in order to help Truth Social make money. Trump, as a private citizen, Trump agreed to make the posts first and kind of almost exclusively on Truth Social. And so now the question becomes, in the cases that are being filed now by Lindsay Halligan, Donald Trump's former personal lawyer, who's now become a federal prosecutor, leading the Eastern District of Virginia, despite her never even being a prosecutor before in her entire life. Are these messages discoverable? Like when James Comey files his vindictive prosecution motion and outrageous grand jury conduct motion and or grand jury abuse, outrageous government conduct motion, and he seeks discovery, is he going to go for those direct communications? I'm sure that's not the only message. Are there a treasure trove of direct messages on Truth Social between Pam Bondi and Donald Trump there? And I think it puts Pam Bondi out there as something that she did not want the appearance of. I think she was okay hiding it. We saw earlier this week when she was when she testified under oath before the Senate, she was willing to, she had her scripted lines attacking each of the Democratic senators. Well, you are Antifa and you're this. I'm not going to answer. I would never talk about those communications. So she understood the assignment in terms of trying to avoid perjury and trying to avoid accountability by just saying, I'm not going to tell you, which again is fairly unprecedented. It's an oversight hearing. Like you're obligated to tell. In normal situations, that would pretty much get you fired as the Attorney General. I can't even imagine if another AG performed the way she did at that hearing. But now, is this discoverable information? Is this going to come out eventually? Does this link Pam Bondi to Trump's orders in ways that, if this was discovered through investigative journalism in the past, it would bring down an entire administration like that. And I understand, in this Trump dictatorship, things are handled differently and viewed differently. But I want to turn it over to Harry Litman from the Talking Feds YouTube channel, Talking Feds podcast, and Talking Feds Substack. Because, Harry, I think if it's framed that way, imagine if investigative journalist, right, from the past, instead of like Watergate, what they discovered, the president of the United States sending notes to the Attorney General, go after my political opponents. Then they go after the political opponents. Some investigative journalist in the 70s exposes it. Harry, it would be done. You're done. Presidency falls. AG falls. Criminal charges get brought. It's over. Like, it's not even a question. So it happens in public, but because we live in a dictatorship now, essentially. It's like, well, that's just Donald Trump but she's scared, it seems, because and why she's pissed is she's like, I don't have the absolute immunity. And my guess too is what Donald Trump had to promise her. I'm going to give you one of those pardons after I leave also. I'm going to give you a future pardon on everything. And I bet you Trump's promised that to a lot of people. If I was a guessing person, that was communicated to her. What do you make of it, Harry?
Yeah. So it's a really interesting, important question. So we're talking selective prosecution, and what we actually know now, what that note says, and it's just an almost incontrovertible case, right? He screams at her. You're right. It's a little weird the way he communicates, even if he thinks it's an email. And what he says is, in all caps, simultaneously, he's saying he doesn't know what they've done, but he's screaming at her. They get it done. We're looking bad. They impeached me twice and indicted me 5 times. It is time for justice to be done. In other words, defining it completely without any doubt as a reprisal for their having done their jobs. There's not even any suggestion that in doing their jobs they'd gone awry of the law, et cetera. It's just they went after me. The reason, and it's an exigent reason, and we got to get it done now, is simply because they did the job that they were supposed to do, which, as a quick aside, it drives me nuts now that some people are using her appearance and others, they have amnesia a little about January 6th, what a righteous and necessary prosecution that was, and that some people are now sort of seeing, both sides do it, is really terribly wrong. But let's go to this issue. What about that? It's great evidence. Here's how it'll work. He'll bring a selective prosecution motion 99 out of 100 times. That motion will be denied. All kinds of defendants think they were selected out, but the threshold is high. And the 100th time, it may be, they might grant a little discovery and then it would be denied. This is the 101st time or the 0 time, whatever. The basic facts are so strong, and they've got it right. Plaintiff and any party has a right to prove, a due process right to prove their case with the best evidence. And the best evidence here, I think, has to be the words that come out of Donald Trump's mouth. If you ask, put Lindsey Halligan on the stand, what did Donald Trump tell you? First, objection, hearsay. And second, it doesn't really bring it home the way, what did you tell Lindsey Halligan if he has to? Now, so I think what's going to happen, and Pat Fitzgerald, remember, he was the special prosecutor with Libby and Cheney. He knows how to play these stress points. He'll move for the motion and make a very strong case for discovery. What happens then? They're going to fight it tooth and nail. They always do. There's some tremendous paranoia of anything coming out, but they'll say executive privilege maybe first. But we know from the Nixon case, executive privilege is only a partial. It's not absolute. And in fact, if it's the only way you can get the evidence, is what happened in Nixon itself, then it ought to yield. So unless, they gin up something more special about the special rules for the president. And as long as I mention that, I just need to say there's 0 in the immunity opinion, the infamous Trump versus U.S. immunity opinion that should have to do with this here. They do, they just said he couldn't be indicted or investigated for a crime, but there's that one incredible overreach in the immunity opinion, which basically says you can't even get evidence of communications between the president and the Department of Justice. Now, that's in the context of immunity, and it really should not apply to a plaintiff's effort to build evidence in a selective prosecution motion. But, the court having been so bullish and turning such cartwheels in his favor, elsewhere might do it here. But to my mind, the basic rubric for, your listeners, he's got a great case of selective prosecution. He's got a right to prove it with the best evidence. That evidence is from Trump. Maybe you do interrogatories or a video deposition or whatever, but you need Trump under oath to really prove your case. And if they won't do it, that's a reason in and of itself for the court to dismiss. But I think that's going to be a real kind of brouhaha once Comey, once Fitzgerald for Comey and Abby Lowell for Letitia James says, we got a great case here and we need some discovery, Your Honors.
Just everybody think about that moment where Donald Trump's going to get deposed and he's been out there making all the comments. He's the main and only witness in this vindictive prosecution scheme. And he says, I'm not doing it. And then the court says, well, if you're not doing it, I'm going to have to dismiss it because there's a showing that you're the person. So either you do it or I'm going to have no choice as the judge. And then what's Donald going to say? Oh, it's just so unfair, blah, 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 blah. It's the judge going after me. It's like, sorry, dude, sit for the deposition now. You've made yourself. Yes, this is unprecedented, but no president ever has done this for this specific reason. And also because they follow the law. Harry, before we go, anything you want to say?
Yeah, and lied about it. So yeah, I'll say that. But I don't know what you think, Ben. I think Lindsay Halligan's in a world of hurt, and maybe Pam Bondi as well, because they have something that Donald Trump doesn't have, a bar license, and they could really get clobbered there. I think if all this happens, and any way you slice it, I think the odds are overwhelming that both these cases don't go to conviction. I think he'll just find a way to try to declare victory and move on, that he's already knows he's exacted pain and expense and humiliation. And that's at least part of it. Or he'll say, well, we can't give this information that the liberal judge is trying to do. So normally you roll the dice this much on a big case and it falls completely falls around you. It's humiliating, but he's, sort of beyond shame and humiliation. And the question is whether it's being followed closely enough by the American people to have you and I have outrage. I mean, real outrage, white hot outrage, but that's because I know how basic and fundamental to the Constitution or any prosecutor's office is the command that you can't prosecute people because they're political enemies of the president. I think for maybe a lot of people, it sounds like one of 20 sort of sins, whereas really we are in, I did a Substack called Ninth Circle of Hell, the last one in the Inferno. That's where I think we are. This is truly revolting it just doesn't happen this is what happens in authoritarian societies, not democracies.
Everybody subscribe to Harry Litman's YouTube channel. It's called Talking Feds. So search Talking Feds, like federal prosecutors, feds. Then search Talking Feds wherever you get your audio podcast and subscribe to the Talking Feds Substack. Thanks, Harry.
Thanks, Ben.
And everybody hit subscribe. Let's get to 6 million subscribers.
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MeidasPlus.com.